You're listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, where you get valuable information you just can't find anywhere else. To thrive in today's trying times, you need the Financial Survival Network, now more than ever. Go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com and get your free newsletter and gift. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.
Welcome. You are listening to the Financial Survival Network. I'm Kerry Lutz. It's 12/23/21. Well, one of the big problems with what we've just been through, the pandemic, the real estate crash of 08 and 09, a lot of you out there want homes, new homes, but don't have the credit, you're self-employed. All these issues come into play. I know for myself, I was jumping through hoops recently to buy a home. Hey, if you want to write a check, the world is your oyster. But we've got Chris Prefontaine with us. Chris bills himself as a smart real estate coach.com and has been doing this for 30 years. Chris, we're thrilled to have you on the show. What is a person supposed to do now if you can't get a mortgage? You're kind of stuck, aren't you?
Yeah, the buyer scene could be ugly right now. And what I didn't tell you off air, Kerry, when we were chatting, is what sparked this whole thing, maybe 9 years ago now for me, was coming out of the crash, watching my credit tank and then going, okay, well, how the heck do I buy a house now? And my wife said, well, you might want to share this with people. So this is how this whole thing was spawned. But the way the foray into buying, if you can't buy now, or you think you can't buy now, is to just do it through a solid, credible rent-to-own program. And I say that very carefully because there's a lot of ways to do it incorrectly too.
Yeah, I see these rent-to-owns around. In Florida, it's like up until a few years ago, if you were sitting with a property in a expensive country club community, they were going for nothing. It was extremely hard to get rid of them. And that's where I saw in my area a lot of rent-to-owns take place. In these communities, literally, the owners up until 2-3 years ago were writing checks to the buyers to get them to take the property because they had to join the country club, everything else. So how do you find a real rent-to-own program that's not out to gouge you?
Yeah, two sides of this: out to not to gouge you, but also there are sellers. And look, this is public, so I'm not stepping on anyone's toes here. Publicly, some educators will say, well, if you're an investor, you just put a rent-to-own buyer in there, whether they qualify or not, because you get their down payment. And if they default, they default. Well, morally and ethically, that's awful. So two things you got to do if you're a buyer. And if you're an investor, this is probably rules you should live by. And that is, make sure that you're going through some kind of an underwriting process at the beginning of this. This is not just, hey, I got a down payment, I don't know when I'll ever qualify, and I want to rent this home and I want to buy it eventually. No, you've got to have a mortgage plan ready with the house you're going into, with someone that knows what they're doing. It says to you, if you go do A, B, C, D, you'll be mortgage ready in this amount of time. Literally predictable, 18 months, 12 months, 24. So you'll be mortgage ready. We don't put anyone in a house unless they pass that smell test, because you're setting them up to fail. And then as far as not being gouged, this is simple. If you're a buyer, you have the mentality of, I'm going to put down 5, 10, or 15 or 20% on a jumbo eventually when I buy. Okay, well, that's where you should be in this rent-to-own property. And you can do some of it up front and some of it over time, but you've got to have the buyer mentality. That's all. You're a buyer. You just need time.
Okay, so basically, just run us through how a rent-to-own program really works.
Sure. There's different opinions on this. And again, so we're pretty solid with making sure people win. So here's how ours works. If you're a buyer and you're entering one of our homes, so you're going to go through that qualification process I talked about, where they do look at, just like an underwriter, front end and back end housing ratios, your debt to income, all that stuff gets looked at, with the caveat that one of two things are probably in place. One, you might need credit repair. That's why you're here. Good. We'll give you time and a plan to do that. Or B, you're self-employed, newly self-employed. COVID drove a lot of this with new entrepreneurship, and you need what the bank calls seasoning for 2 years. And so you're going to take either one of those pathways. And then during that process, you are going to enter the home just like you bought it. The only difference is no deed transferred yet. So what does that mean? It means you're going to fix it. You're not going to call the investor or the owner and say, my toilet's clogged. You're there and you're going to pay for repairs and act like you're a buyer. The upside is you're also going to get any appreciation if the market's appreciating over time. If there's a downside, that if the market falls a little bit, again, you're a buyer. You're going to live with that. And so you got to put that buyer hat on. The only difference is you don't have a mortgage yet. That's how the process works. And then again, it might take you 12, 18, 24 months to get mortgage ready. You'll then cash it out.
All right. So you've bought a number of properties this way, Chris?
We've done about 700 or so deals where we enter on our end as an investor, lease purchase or owner financing, and we exit this way with a rent to own. Our success rate is about 95% cash out. That's inverse relationship to what you'll hear other investors doing. Why? Because we're so strict with our buyer process. We don't just throw people in there hoping they'll get financing.
Okay. So you will actually buy a house, a rent to own or whatever, and then find someone else to rent it from you and buy it effectively?
If we bought it, yeah. If we tied it up with a lease purchase, we're gonna exit it on a rent to own. Yep. So you could say both of those are sort of rent to owns. If we buy it on owner financing, then we're gonna still exit on a rent to own.
All right. So you'll buy a property, you'll do owner financing, and then you'll find a tenant to effectively buy your option, right?
Yeah, I call it tenant buyers. And instead of buying our option, we actually have the right with our agreement with our sellers to put a tenant buyer in that property. And so we live with it the whole time.
So you've got the right to assign.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So do you make money on the rent? Is there a spread there, or do you make your money at the end when the tenant owner actually exercises their option and buys the home?
Yeah, great question. So on most methods, there's one exception. On most methods, we create what we call 3 paydays. We actually trademark this in the United States. The 3 paydays are as follows. Remember, I said the buyer is a qualified buyer. They have a down payment they were going to buy. They just found out they couldn't. So payday 1 is non-refundable down payment. That's are you serious money? Number 2, payday is the spread you referred to. It's going to be, I'm paying on an underlying debt for that seller, or I'm paying to that seller if it's owner financing, and I'm collecting something more from the buyer every month. That's payday number 2. Yes. So a spread, it ranges 300 to 1,000. It's not enormous, but that's every house per month. And then the back end, we mark the property up usually, as well as the big kicker is all the principal pay down to the term accrues to us as the investor. So it's 3 paydays instead of 1 on a deal.
So you wouldn't be like buying a property from me. I can't sell it, whatever. And I can't sell it. So you buy it from me, 5-year interest only mortgage, say. At the end of 5 years, you buy it down. Would you do that?
Don't just survive, thrive. The Financial Survival Network.
Goldterra Resource Corp is a gold exploration company that has assembled a highly prospective district-scale land position on the doorstep of the city of Yellowknife in Canada's Northwest Territories. Goldterra is currently focused on expanding and delineating gold resources at the company's Yellowknife City Gold Project, with a goal of discovering over 5 million ounces. With ready access to infrastructure and multiple high-grade gold discoveries, Goldterra is on track to re-establishing Yellowknife as one of the premier gold mining districts in Canada. Goldterra trades as YGT in Toronto and YGTFF on the OTC. For more information, go to goldterracorp.com. That's goldterracorp.com.
This is the Financial Survival Network, the information you need to thrive now more than ever.
Yep, that's one option, but I'll tell you that would be kind of 1% of the time. Usually this building, I told you we bought this building I'm standing in. We structure, usually the owner financing deals, we structure them with owners that are free and clear. They tend to be pretty, I wouldn't say sophisticated, but they're set up financially, obviously, if they're free and clear. So they tend to be more open to creative. And we structure monthly principal payments, no interest. So it's hammering down principal every month. And people say, well, why would they want to do that? They want their price, whether it's ego or whatever it is, they want their price. Give me my price, and then I'll give you your terms, sort of thing. And so we do monthly principal payments on most owner financing deals. It's a great recession hedge too.
So monthly principal, and what kind of interest rate are you giving them?
No interest rate usually. And the ones that want interest rate, this gentleman here where I bought this property, he was a big landowner in the area. He's not new to real estate. And he said, whoa, I want 5.2% interest rate. And I said, well, we usually do principal only. What we did is we came to terms where I paid principal only pretty heavy for about 1.5 years. And then that balance amortized with a 5.2% interest rate. We both won. It was a major hammering down of principal that you wouldn't get in the term of a loan, never mind in the first year.
How hard is it to find these deals? Like here in Florida, in a good area, anybody looking to buy a house, the houses are being snapped up.
Everywhere.
Nobody has to resort to owner financing to sell a house in my area. Why would they do it?
Yeah, two things. One is how likely there's about a third of the properties in the United States free and clear. I just heard you speak of Florida. I heard a woman say to me the other day, she's a mortgage broker in Naples, Florida. She said, no, it's like 52%. So there's a lot of free and clear property in the United States. And it's not why would they have to or why would they do it? What happens is just like the owner who I bought this from, who sadly passed away this year, but 3 years ago when I met him, he wanted owner financing only, even though he was debt free, if he could get his price, because he wanted some tax benefits there to be spread out and he wanted some cash flow for his estate. And so that's why they would do it. Better price and some planning going on versus, oh, I need to. No, they don't need to. They're financially set up. They could sell tomorrow. This guy could have, and he preferred to do a owner financing deal with me. In fact, while he was alive, he said to me, he forgot to put a prepay in there. And he said, do not refinance or get me out. He did not want to be paid off. So it's more of a personal preference.
Interesting. So finding these people who are going to do this, how hard is that?
We just get the list. There's a list of free and clear properties, and anywhere you are right now, any listener, just get a list of free and clear properties. It's a great pond to fish in, so to speak.
Yeah. So if you're not paying interest, then rates don't matter. So you're paying their full list, and you're hoping that the property is going to appreciate, which certainly over the past 12 years since the crash, you would have done quite well on this.
Yeah, but Kerry, think of this. Even if it doesn't, I'll give you a direct example. I love giving examples. We bought a home here down by Cape Cod. It's a resort area. It was on a bluff overlooking the ocean. We still have this house. A realtor, mind you, sold it to us because she couldn't sell in the open market. We pay her $2,500 per month principal payment only. Bought the house for $945,000. If the market doesn't appreciate and it stays flat or goes backwards, I got $30,000 a year coming off principal. That's why I like that recession hedge right there.
And obviously, that's a very rentable property, ocean views and water views in Cape Cod. We know that for sure. Well, so how hard is this to get started if you want to do it?
Well, okay, we've been talking about owner financing a little bit, and we mixed in lease purchase, you and I. The lease purchase, if you're brand new and you're trying to get your feet wet in real estate, is the way I would tell you to start. It's how I started with the terms business, even though I've been at this 30 years, because I came out of the crash and had no money or credit. Our lease purchase agreements are all pre-done and pre-built with a $10 deposit, literally a $10 deposit. And when I talk about those 3 paydays, the 3 paydays that we've trademarked, they go from like 45 grand to 250 across the country with all our deals with different students and hours. That's a big number for one deal. And so start with lease purchase, simple $10 deposit, learn the ropes, and you can get some nice 3 paydays accumulated.
So the key is, though, it has to be assignable. You can't be the sole lessee. You have to be able to sublease or sublease purchase.
Yeah, you said it right. Yeah.
So that's got to be in your agreement. And I see why you'd want the property free and clear, the person selling it, because they don't want to be stuck with a mortgage if there's a default, right?
Yeah, I mean, there's still that discussion. You've got to build up some trust, obviously, right? So sometimes we'll do a lease purchase with someone to build trust and credibility, and then we'll convert that deal. It's a whole different advanced discussion, but some of these deals start one way and then they convert a little bit later as you build up the credibility and trust with the seller.
All right. So I know this is off the topic, but I'm just curious if there's any role for it. Airbnb type property, sounds like your one in the Cape there is perfect for that.
Yeah, no, not off topic, actually. Good point, Kerry. So some of our students, if they have a property that's a little harder to sell, or they have a longer enough term where they can say, hey, let's VRBO or Airbnb this for a while, and then let's convert it. So they can cash flow the daylights out of it and then turn it into a rent-own. It's a very good strategy. Yeah, we teach that as well. It's one of many exits. Absolutely.
Right. All right. And you know what I've learned about Airbnb? It doesn't matter what town, how undesirable as a tourist location it might be.
Yeah.
It's not just for tourist travel. There is a market. I mean, I've got a close associate up in Saskatchewan, Canada,
Yeah.
where I wouldn't think that nobody in their right mind would ever want to do an Airbnb. But you know what? There are oil workers up there and construction workers, and they do these multi-month gigs. And they'll rent out a place. He just bought another place. He's converting it to Airbnb, and he's just crushing it on it, Chris.
I wouldn't know that area other than my wife and I traveled there and spoke there. And that's all I met is that type of person who goes in and transit people going in and out of there. So spot on. Yeah.
Yeah, really fascinating. Well, I know that you're going to want to find out more. You're going to want to connect with Chris. SmartRealEstateCoach.com. That's the place to get you there, Chris.
Yep, you bet. Thank you.
All right. And there's a link in the show notes. If you got a question for Chris, shoot me an email, kl@kerrylutz.com. We'll make sure you get an answer. Chris, this is a fascinating little sideways, a little variation on real estate investing. I'm going to look into it further myself. I really appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you having me, buddy. Thank you, and happy holidays.
Yeah, and yourself. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to Kerry Lutz's Financial Survival Network, your solution to today's trying times. For the latest, go to financialsurvivalnetwork.com. Financial Survival Network, now more than ever.